What's up, guys? Welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, crazy people, and everything in between. Hope you're all doing wonderful. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and as usual, we're getting right into today's Reddit posts. How I caught my now ex-wife cheating with my best friend. I destroyed his marriage as payback. I was married to my prom queen type high school sweetheart for 10 years. She had become distant, as hard as I tried to be loving and a good husband. I adored her and placed her on a pedestal. There were lots of little signs that indicated something wasn't right. I just had a gut feeling, but never suspected her of cheating. One time I walked into the study and she quickly changed the screen on the computer and smiled at me before distracting me with some inane banter. The next day I installed spyware software on the computer that took a screenshot every 10 seconds and captured all keystrokes. After a few days I checked it and discovered that she had a secret Hotmail account and the spyware had captured the password. I went into her account and, much to my horror, discovered 6 months worth of emails between her and my best friend. I read them all, hundreds of emails documenting their affair. Weekends away together when she told me she was at a conference or training course. Midweek hookups while I was feeding and bathing our 2 young children before bed. F***ing each other's brains out in my bed while I was at work. I was stunned. My world came crashing down around me. I honestly went into shock. For a few days I struggled through it, but didn't say anything. She went away on a quote course the next weekend. I knew what she was really doing as I was checking the emails between them. Here's the revenge. I printed off every single email between them for the 6 months. Over the weekend while they were away, I went around to his house and sat down with his wife, who was also a close friend and lovely person. I handed her the ream of paper I had printed and sat there for 2 hours watching her read all the emails. She was sobbing and crying as she read. As a now humorous side note, she looked up at me and said, "Do you want to f***?" I said no, but gave her a hug. I didn't want to stoop to their level and give them justification for their behavior. When my wife returned from her dirty weekend away, she walked in and I walked past her with a bag in each arm. She asked where I was going, and I said, "I'm leaving. I left you something on the table." It was the printout of the emails. I walked out the door and never went back. She begged and pleaded for a year, but I no longer trusted or respected her. His marriage was done within the year. I'm still happily single while she is miserable in another marriage. New neighbor didn't like my old fence, so I took it down. About 5 or 6 years ago, I built a fence in my backyard. I talked to my neighbors and we decided on a good place to build the fence. We knew an approximate property line based on some survey pins, but were both too cheap to pay for a surveyor. We shook hands and I built the fence. It was a great deal for my neighbors. I paid for everything, built the fence, and all they had to do was give me a thumbs up when it was done. Then a year later, they sold their house. That meant I got a new neighbor. More specifically, I got Anne. Anne was from the big city. Anne was a realtor. Anne had flipped 8 houses in 12 years. Anne loved this new house and planned on staying for a long time, and Anne had a dog. Razzie was a German Shepherd mix that spent most of the day outside while Anne went to work. Razzie was aggressive towards children, animals, insects, and any plants that waved in the breeze. Razzie also, as Anne once told me, loved to chew on furniture. That's why Razzie stayed outside so much. About 6 months after Anne moved in, I saw a surveyor walking around in my neighborhood and he was paying special attention to my backyard. The next day, Anne showed up at my front door with a stack of papers and asked me if I was going to pay her for the 9 inches that my fence was encroaching onto her property. I explained the handshake deal with the last neighbors, but she was having no part of it. She wanted the fence moved or she wanted money, no discussions. She had spoken to her lawyer friend and was perfectly happy to take me to court over the fence. She told me, "I don't know how you guys do it out here in the sticks, but where I come from, we follow the rules." So I got rid of the fence. The next day I unscrewed the horizontal rails from the brackets, stacked the fence panels up against my garage, and pulled up the fence posts with my work van. About a week later, Anne shows up at my front door again. She wants to know when I'm going to be building a new fence. Turns out, without my portion of the fence, she has not been able to let Razzie out unattended for fear that he will run away, attack something, or get hit by a car. She also told me she can't keep him in the house all day while she's at work anymore. Her furniture and carpet are all but ruined. I told her, Well, Anne, I'm not going to be rebuilding the fence. I don't want any legal trouble, and the best way to stay out of trouble is to not build near your property. The look on her face was priceless. I thought she was going to cry. She probably did when she got back home. She tried to protest, saying that she really needed the fence, and she would even help pay for the new one. She told me how much she loved the style and aesthetic of the old one. It was just the location that she had a problem with. I stood firm. There would be no new fence. She never got the fence. She made half-hearted attempts to put up some bamboo fencing, but Razzie tore through that stuff like wet newspaper. Eventually, I sold my place and moved away. I took the old fence panels with me, and I still look at them every day when I let my dog out in the morning. Drunk entitled passenger. I was flying from Fort Lauderdale to Jacksonville about 20-ish years ago. Small regional airline, puddle jumper plane. Single seats down one side, double seats down the other. This was back before airlines charged you for the audacity of desiring to breathe while in their tin cans. And since I was booking pretty far ahead of time, I was able to select a seat on the left side, single seats, of the aircraft. Now, being 6'4" and having flown numerous times, I know that the exit row is the primo seat, unless you're paying for first/business class. And I also know that arriving early and asking politely at check-in more often than not gets you that sweet extra legroom as long as it's available. So I show up a couple hours early. Unfamiliar airport, and this was shortly post 9/11, so security was a much longer process to get through. Go to check-in counter. Ask the nice lady if there was any chance of getting the exit row. And sure enough, polite one again. And doubly so, because I not only got the exit row, but I also got to stay on the same side of the plane, which means no one to bump elbows with. Jackpot. Make my way down to the gate, and soon enough it's time to board our flight. Pre-boarding passengers first, then the rest of us cattle. Single-class cabin, so pre-boarding was supposedly only for those needing extra time. I make my way down to my prize, only to find someone is sitting in it. I'm annoyed, but not overly so. Could just be an honest mistake. Sir, I'm sorry, but I think you might be in my seat, and show him my boarding pass. F you. Not exactly the reply I was expecting, except it came out more like f***s huge. So not only belligerent, but drunk and belligerent. Well, I know the rules, and drunk enough to slur speech means no exit row for you. Catch the attention of a flight attendant and talk to her quietly about the situation, and my concern regarding Mr. Drunk and Belligerent and the exit row. Never mind that it's my exit row seat, damn it. She approaches the gentleman, but barely gets a word out before receiving an even louder, "Fush you." I know what's coming next. Sure enough, she heads off to the front of the plane. Mr. D&B smiles smugly, thinking he's won. Meanwhile, I'm grinning like the Cheshire Cat because I know what the next act is. Sure enough, here comes the captain with the flight attendant in tow. Now this gentleman is big. He's got at least 2 inches on me, height-wise, and I suspect if he ever gets bored with being a pilot, he could play defensive back. Clearly, the kind of person who gets out pent-up energy by picking up and putting down very heavy things repeatedly. Sir, what's the issue? Now, Mr. D&B has figured out that the man standing in front of him is some kind of authority figure, but he doesn't quite seem to be able to pin down what kind of authority figure. But in a slightly less drunk corner of his mind, he knows uniform and he knows big. So instead of a repeat of what the flight attendant and I got, the captain gets some drunken warbling about it being his seat, and that I was mean, or something, because I wanted to take it away from him. And that the lady over there, as he points about 2 feet to the left of her, was mean too, or something. The captain meanwhile takes one look at the flight attendant, then back at Mr. D&B. Sir, have you been drinking? 2 beers. As an aside, I really want to see these mystical 2 beers sometime. I imagine they mean kegs, 2 kegs of beer, but I digress. Captain tries to be polite. Sir, could I see your boarding pass? Captain knows that this flight is full, so doubtful he can get this guy into any kind of a decent seat, like a bulkhead seat, to try to bribe him. But he wants to know where this guy is actually supposed to be. Sir, your seat is back there. As he points to an empty seat in the very back of the plane, just forward of the galley and lavatories. Not a primo seat. No-ish not, dish my sheet. With a sigh, the captain turns to me. Sir, could I see your boarding pass? Back to Mr. D&B. Sir, the seat belongs to the gentleman standing here. Please get your belongings and move to your assigned seat. That slightly less drunk part of his brain lost hold of its grip on his mouth. The 2 beers bellowed out, "No, dish me sheets, fushgalls you." I'll be honest, the captain was not expecting this, and then I see a vein throbbing on the captain's forehead that could have doubled as a garden hose. He pointed at me. "Sir, please come with me." Spun on his heel and walked towards the front of the plane. At this point, he just wants to separate Mr. D&B from those he thinks are mean. Once we're out of his earshot, he looks at the flight attendant and asks her to call the airport police to escort the gentleman off the aircraft. I glance back, and Mr. D&B is smiling smugly again, thinking he's somehow won. That smile lasted about 7 more minutes until the local gendarmes arrived to inform Mr. D&B that he can either walk off the plane under his own power, or he could be cuffed and assisted off the plane. I will credit the cops, they had much more patience than I had. About 5 minutes of drunken whinging about everyone being mean, and it being his sheet. Eventually they too lost patience, and then the silver bracelets came out and off they went, with our drunk friend now protesting loudly that the cops were mean. Am I the a-hole for not packing my brother's luggage and letting him get arrested? My parents and brother seem to consider me his servant since he was born. Don't know why though, it's not cultural. We are as homegrown as can be. He is 5 years younger than me and has always been spoiled. Whatever. I got out and got my education. Thanks to my dual citizenship, I was able to get a job in Vancouver, Canada in the film industry, and I like to think I'm doing well. I met my boyfriend here and we will see where that goes. My parents brought my brother up to visit me last week. My brother is on his gap year and my parents wanted to take him skiing up here. They stayed with me for a couple days on their way home. It was great to see them, even though they tried to turn me into his maid again. On their way home, he tried to tell me to pack his bag for him. I politely told him to get f***ed. I wasn't even in our parents' house, and I didn't have to follow their rules. He got angry and just crammed his stuff in his bag. Fun fact about cannabis in Canada, each province sets their age limit for use. Next door in Alberta, you can buy alcohol and weed at 18. In my province, it's 19. There are also signs all over the airport that say not to travel with that over the border, even if it is legal in your state. Guess what he had in his luggage? Guess who got in trouble for not being careful about his luggage? My parents are mad at me because I was so irresponsible to let him pack that in his luggage. My brother thinks I'm an asshole for not packing his luggage. And I actually feel quite badly about the idiot getting in trouble. He is a spoiled little jerk, but I do love him. And if he had asked me nicely, I would have helped him pack and reminded him of the law. Well, it's a pretty easy question. Of course you're not the a-hole here, OP. It's not your responsibility to remind a grown adult to not bring cannabis onto a plane. And even then, as OP said, there are signs all over the airport saying not to do that. So it's not like it'd be very hard to figure out that it's not allowed. That's his own fault. But the fact that your parents are trying to blame you for this is honestly a pretty good indication of the kind of family dynamic that you guys have. And it also kind of makes sense why your brother is the way he is. Anyway, friends, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Make sure to drop a like if you enjoyed and subscribe to the channel for more Reddit shenanigans. So stay awesome, have a nice day, and I'll see you next time.